I still remember the smell of burning flesh from that night. Even now, years later, I can't eat goat meat without thinking about what really happened at the king's feast. My hands shake when I tell this story, but people need to know the truth about King Addo and what he did to our village. My name is Kwame. I was a servant in King Addo's palace in our small kingdom 15 years ago. I started working there when I was 16, after my father died in a farming accident. At first, I thought I was lucky. Working in the palace meant I could help feed my mother and 3 younger siblings. We lived in the servant quarters with other families, and I had a small but comfortable room near the kitchen where I worked. King Addo wasn't always cruel. That's what makes this story even harder to tell. When I first started working at the palace, he seemed like a decent ruler. He was stern but fair. He had a round belly and laughed a lot. The village elders respected him, and he seemed to care about our people. But things changed after his wife died. It started slowly. First, he stopped coming out of his chambers during the day. Then he began making strange rules. No one could wear red in the palace because it reminded him of blood. Then he banned mirrors because he said evil spirits could use them to spy on him. People thought grief had made him odd, but we felt sorry for him. But then the disappearances began. Every month, during the new moon, King Addo would host a grand feast. He'd invite one family from our village to dine with him. It was supposed to be a great honor. The chosen family would dress in their finest clothes and head to the palace at sunset. But they never came back. The king would always say they were given special homes in a faraway city as a reward. Nobody believed it, but who could question the king? When people tried to ask questions, they disappeared too. Soon, everyone learned to stay quiet. I noticed things in the palace that didn't make sense. Like how the king's personal guards would carry heavy bundles down to the basement at night. Or how the palace witch doctor started asking for more and more herbs that were used for sleeping potions. But I kept my head down and did my work. I had to protect my family. Then one day, my little sister Oma came running to the kitchen. She was crying. "Kwame," she said, "Mother says we're invited to dine with the king tonight." My heart stopped. I knew what this meant, but I couldn't tell her. She was so excited, showing me the new bracelet Mother had bought her for the occasion. It was made of colored beads, blue and white, her favorite colors. That evening, as I helped in the kitchen, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. The king's personal cook was preparing the meat for the feast, but it didn't look like our usual goat meat. The skin, it was different. Then I saw something that made my blood freeze, Oma's bracelet, the blue and white one, right there next to the meat. I backed away from the kitchen slowly. The cook saw me. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew he knew that I knew. He reached for his knife. I ran. I ran faster than I'd ever run before. Behind me, I could hear shouts and the sound of guards' boots. I didn't stop when my chest burned. I didn't stop when thorns tore at my feet. I ran through the night, through the forest that separated our kingdom from the next. I reached the neighboring kingdom at dawn. There, in a small village near the border, I found others who had fled. A former palace guard. A seamstress. A farmer. All had pieces of the same horrible story. Together, we went to the neighboring king's palace and begged for an audience. This king, King Mensa, was different. He listened. He asked questions. And most importantly, he believed us. When we finished our story, he was silent for a long time. Then he sent messengers to 4 other kingdoms. 2 days later, warriors from all 5 surrounding kingdoms stormed King Addo's palace. They found his special chamber beneath the dining hall. I won't describe what was in there, but let's just say we finally knew what happened to all those families. The warriors found cooking pots larger than men, special knives, and things that still give me nightmares. But worst of all, they found records. King Addo kept detailed notes of every family he had eaten and made others eat. 34 families. 162 people. Including my mother, my sisters, and my brother. King Addo was executed the next day. They say he laughed until the very end, saying he would live forever because pieces of him were now in all of us. In a way, he was right. The memory of what he did lives in everyone who survived. The palace still stands empty today. Nobody will live there. The vines have taken over the walls, and they say even the monkeys won't eat the fruit from the palace gardens. In my village, we never invite people for dinner without first showing them the food being prepared. Some traditions are born from terrible things. I'm an old man now. I own a small farm far from our old village. Most nights, I sleep peacefully. But sometimes, when the moon is dark and the wind blows just right, I catch a scent that takes me back to that kitchen. And I remember that the scariest monsters don't hide under our beds or in our closets. Sometimes, they sit on thrones, wear crowns, and invite us to dinner. I tell this story not to frighten you, but to warn you. Watch carefully what your leaders do. Notice the small changes. Listen to the whispers. And if something feels wrong, run. Run as fast as you can. Don't look back. Because sometimes, the most terrifying things happen right in front of us, at a dinner table, with a smiling host who calls himself king.